Welcome back to another episode on Sew Simone. I'm Simone and I'm sharing my journey as a very beginner sewist. Today we are making a Peter Pan inspired blouse. I've been seeing them all over Pinterest and I just thought to myself, I need one of those. What I did is I found a video on Jess Dang's channel, which I'll link below, where she actually shows you how to self-draft the pattern according to your own measurements. So I've already gone ahead and I've done that. I've got a sleeve, a front bodice, a back bodice, and this is eventually going to become our little collar. Then I think the thing I'm most excited for is I found just the cutest fabric. So we're going to be using this baby cotton. It's white, but if you see it up close, it's got little yellow tulips all over it, which so cute. And then I happened to find these very cute little yellow buttons, which I think will just complement this very well. Okay, you gonna go with your dad, hey? Almost all of my pattern pieces are cut out and ready. The only thing that I will need to cut out a little bit further down the line is the bias tape that will be going around the collar area. But I first need that to be constructed. So we've got 2 pieces for the sleeve, 2 pieces for the collar, which I'm really looking forward to this. Oh, there's another piece I'm forgetting, the ruffle for the collar. That's another thing I'm going to have to cut, but we will get there when we get there. I definitely have enough fabric, so that's good. We've got our back bodice piece, and then we've got our 2 front bodice pieces with the special extra piece here that will become, I think you call it a placket? The placket? I don't know, the piece where the buttons are going to go. So I think we can start construction. To start with construction, we're going to take the bodice pieces, and then we're going to take the back bodice piece. I want to have the good side of the fabric upright facing me, and then I'm going to take each of the front bodice pieces, and then I'm putting the good side of the fabric facing down towards the back bodice piece. So I'm just doing the shoulder seam. We've got a straight stitch at about 2.0. I'm going to do 0 tension and needle in the middle. Okie dokie. Now that our shoulder seams are together and they've been zigzag stitched, or if you have an overlocker, you would overlock them, I am going to be adding the sleeves. Jess actually closes out the sides before she adds the sleeves, but because I'm doing the sleeves differently, I've decided to add the sleeves first. But now the thing with these sleeves is they're going to have a nice ruffle at the top here. You know, I love a big dramatic sleeve. So how I'm going to be attaching these is, wait. Before I can actually attach the sleeves to the bodice, I need to do a basting stitch, which would just kind of be over the top part of the sleeve. As you can see, I'm very impatient and I wanted to see what the fabric is going to look like. Very happy. Something that I'm loving about this fabric is that it has got such a clear good side and bad side. Usually I'm squinting to try to figure it out, but not this time. So we're going to have the right side facing up. This is our sleeve opening. This is the front, this is the back. I'm just matching the center notch to the bodice seam. Then I'm going to take my corner of my sleeve and the corner of the bodice piece, the front bodice piece, and I'm going to secure that. Then I'm going to take the corner of the back sleeve and the back bodice piece and match corner to corner. I like to pin my sleeve to the bodice all the way up to where my basting stitch starts, and then I pull the basting stitch through to create those notches, and then will secure the rest of the sleeve. So that's what I'm doing right now. So now you guys can see these are the corners of the bodice pieces and the corner of the sleeves, and I've pinned all the way up to where the basting stitch begins, which is here, and all this excess fabric is what's going to become the ruffle. So now I can start taking the thread and gently start pulling it through here. I always say this, but I'll never get sick of saying it, gently, because if you pull too hard, it's going to snap and you're going to have to do it all over again. So I'm just pulling this until the sleeve is the same size as the bodice piece. I'm so happy with the way that the sleeve turned out. I love the puff. It's a perfect amount of puff. So it seems that I've finally learned my lesson and learned to make appropriate sized seams. When I first started sewing my garments, I was sewing so close to the edge for whatever reason. I'm not exactly sure why. But then obviously that led to me missing a lot of the fabric, and then we would have holes and, you know. So I've definitely improved on that front, which is great. Okay, so time for the second sleeve. My husband went and did a bit of grocery shopping at the fruteria today, which is like the produce store here in our neighborhood, and he bought garlic powder, and the whole house, when I tell you the whole house, just smells like garlic powder. That is literally all I can smell. And if you're wondering why he bought garlic powder, that is because he is making dinner for us tonight. I think he said he was going to try and make like a lentil curry type of thing. Not sure. But I am just very grateful to be married to a man who enjoys cooking for me. I mean, I am in charge of like 80% of our meals, but he's very competent when it comes to cooking, and that I can definitely attribute to dear sweet Mama Ellie, Giovanni's mom, who is a fabulous cook. I cannot believe how quickly we are moving through this project today. I think this is an all-time record. I think now, because like I've done a few projects, I'm a lot more comfortable with my machine and pinning things and cutting things. Yeah, I might even be able to finish this today. I don't want to set unrealistic expectations, but this might be a one-day project. Okay, so you can see where we currently are. We are going to be joining the sleeves and closing out the bodice pieces. So I'm going to do that real quick, and you know the drill by now. So we do a straight stitch, come over here, press the seams open, and then I do a zigzag stitch. I've found that the pressing is absolutely essential. If you want your seams to look crisp, you've got to press them. And to join this all together, I like to put a pin at the very end of the sleeve, then down at the seams where the sleeve, the back bodice, and the front bodice will be meeting, right there. Okay, and then right at the bottom of the bodice pieces. My husband has been out watching football with the boys. Who were you watching?
Florida State University.
Florida State University versus?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh? Okay. Okay, so the sides and the sleeves are all closed up, pressed, zigzag stitched. Obviously, if you have an overlocker, they would be overlocked. Now we can figure out what I'm going to be doing with these sleeves. So now that our sleeves have been hemmed, I'm going to be following another video tutorial that Jess Dang does, where she shows the style of sleeve that I want. I'm going to be hacking that a little bit. It's not exactly what I'm looking for. What I originally thought I was going to do for the sleeve was take my elastic, which I've already measured to my wrist, and then I thought what I could do is I could sew it directly onto the sleeve and just, you know, stretch the elastic so that it fits the whole way around the sleeve. But if you look at the size of the end of the sleeve, there is no ways this tiny piece of elastic fits the whole way. So that's actually why what Jess does is she makes a little channel on the inside of the sleeve, just up from the hem, that will allow me to feed the elastic into. To determine how big my channels need to be, I need to measure the width of the sleeve, which is 33, and then double it, which would be 66. What I need to do now is take my strips, fold them over, and then just close them along here with a small 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then I will be back to show you where we go from there. So now that I've created this band, what I'm going to be doing is obviously ironing down the seam allowance. I'm going to have the bad side out. I'm going to be folding each side of the fabric equally towards the center, like that. And then that is what's going to create our channel that we can eventually feed the elastic band through. This is what they look like. Now I've got 7,000 ants on this countertop. They just keep coming from I don't know where. From my experience so far working with baby cotton versus linen, is I think linen is definitely the better choice when you're doing like small fidgety things like this, because it irons so much more effectively. This baby cotton doesn't hold the iron nearly as well, so that's why all these things are popping up. But anyways, we can't turn back now. I'm going to feed this little loop over my inside out sleeve. This is where my hem is that I just did, and then this is the loop. I'm going to keep this channel no more than about 4 centimeters, no, exactly 4 centimeters from the hem. So I'm going to start securing this on. Unfortunately, I'm definitely not finishing this top today because, like I said, we're having our neighbor over for dinner, so it's just about time for us to start preparing for that. And then we'll just have to pick up with the rest of the project on Monday. So what still needs to be done is completing the sleeves, doing the collar, adding the ruffle to the collar, popping the collar on, doing a bias tape around the collar, the whole button situation, and then the hem. So there's still quite a lot left to do, but I'm really glad that we've got the main body piece together. My husband has already started prep for tonight's dinner. He's making us a lentil curry.
It's so nice.
It smells really good. So I believe we will be finishing this blouse today. That's the hope, at least. I don't think that there's that many things left to do, but it's always those little things that you underestimate that end up taking like 10 times longer than you think that they're going to take. I specifically foresee the buttonholes and the buttons being a bit of a thing. I've never actually sewn a button onto anything. So the very first thing I'm going to be doing today is these lovely channels that I created at the end of the sleeves. I'm going to be feeding my little thin elastic through them to create that nice bunching effect. And yeah, after we've done the sleeves, I believe we're going to be moving on to the collar, which I'm really excited to see. Actually, I've been thinking about it. Just give me a second. So for the frills that I'm going to be creating on this collar, I actually realized that I've got the same baby cotton in 3 different options. I can either go with the exact same fabric that I'm currently using, which has got the little yellow flowers, which would be perfect. But then I thought to myself, well, this green that I made that Cholera Ghost dress from, go and watch that video if you haven't seen it. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. This green actually matches the little leaves and stems so beautifully. So there's that, which would add such a nice contrast. I think this would be very effective. Or I could just go with a little bit of a subtle contrast and just use this plain white baby cotton. I mean, it's not as like loud as the green, but it would add a subtle contrast, which I think could be cute. I don't know. I'd love to hear in the comments what you guys think I should go with. I've still got a little bit of time to think about it. So I've just got this part of my channel open, and I'm going to take one of my elastics and I'm putting a safety pin in one side and another one on the other side. I just do the second safety pin so that we don't lose the end of the elastic through the channel, if you know what I mean, because that has happened before. I think that these sleeves are going to be so cute with the collar. We're really leaning into like the pirate style shirt here with the Peter Pan collar, and I think that these little puffs at the end of the sleeves are just so cute. Let me just show you. That's so cute. I love that. I'm so happy with that. So I'm just going to be sewing the elastic band together and then closing off the channel, doing the same thing with this arm, and then our sleeves are complete. So to close off the elastic, I'm going to be putting my machine into a zigzag stitch, and I've got my needle in the very middle and a width of 2.0. So to close off the channel, I'm moving my needle to the right hand side and we're going to do a straight stitch. I'm very happy with how these sleeves have turned out. I think they're so cute, so romantic, so girly. So I'm still not exactly certain which fabric I'm going to go with. In theory, the green sounds nice because it would just add like a little bit of extra flamboyancy to the top. But my worry with it is that this main fabric that I'm using is very see-through. So, you know, all of the extra fabric that would be bunched inside of the collar, I think it will be very noticeable because the green is quite a lot darker. So for that reason, I think I'm ruling out the green. I think I'm going to go with a plain white. I've got plenty of the flower fabric, but I think just for that little extra contrast, I think I'm going to go with a plain white. But I'd really love to hear from you guys. If you were making this, what would you choose? Flower, green, or white? All right, so what I've got to do first is I've got to measure the outside of the ruffle. So everything from this corner here all the way around to this corner here. And then once I've got that measurement, I'll be taking that measurement and multiplying it by 2. So it's double the length of the outside of the collar. And then I've just got to think about how thick I want the ruffle to be, which not too crazy, something like that. And then I've got to double that thickness so that it can be folded in half. Okay, so now that I've got my frill prepared, I've got it cut and I've got it ironed in half, I'm just going to be doing a straight stitch along each end to close it off, and then I'll be flipping it inside out to close out that seam, and then we're going to be doing 2 basting stitches along the open end here so that we can create the frills. Man, Ted is in a terrible mood today. He is, well, what we think is part collie, part chow chow. And if you know anything about chow chows, they are very moody dogs. So when he's in such a bad mood like this, it's honestly very difficult to tell if he's just not feeling well or if he's just in a mood. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with him today, but he is in an absolute huff. Literally all I'm going to be doing is turning this inside out. So we've got that nice closed off end like that. Now we can fold the fabric in the opposite direction. And I'm going to be doing my 2 basting stitches along the open end to close this off. So for your basting stitch, you've just got to make sure you've got nice long tails at the end so you can gather the fabric later. So I'm just pulling that extra long. Then I've got my machine on straight stitch and I'm making the stitch as long as it can be. So in my case it's 4. I don't know, I'm sure other sewing machines go a bit longer, I'm not sure. And then you've also got to remember to not backtrack because you don't want the stitch closed off. You want to be able to pull the fabric through it. Let us begin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these little tails that we left here to start gathering and making the ruffles. I don't want to make it so ruffly that it doesn't fit around the entire perimeter of the collar. It needs to end up being the exact same length as the perimeter of the collar. So I'll start doing the ruffles and then I will attach it, and then we can do some adjustments from there. I am having such a hard time with this ruffle. I already did it one time, pulled the basting stitch through, and then realized, oh wait, this is way too short. So then I had to adjust it to add on a whole nother piece to make it long enough to go around the collar. I did my basting stitch, but I made a huge mistake. When I started my first basting stitch, I didn't pay attention to my machine, and my length of the stitch was only on, I believe it was like 1.5 or something, instead of the biggest stitch, which on my machine is 4. Honestly, I only sewed about that much before I realized, and I was like, whoops, and I changed it to 4, not thinking anything of it. Well, after I did both basting stitches, I realized because those first few stitches are so tight, you actually cannot pull the stitch through, and it just ended up snapping. So it took more than like half an hour to pull all of the threads out, neaten up my little frill piece again, do the basting stitches again. I've been doing it so gently. Just as I got right to the end, I heard it snap somewhere in the middle here. So I've got this whole length about that much right now that no longer has a stitch. But honestly, I really just don't feel like I have the willpower to redo this thing all over again. It's so much work. Plus, because of this fabric, it's fraying so heavily. Every time I have to unpick it and pull the basting stitch through, it's really fraying so badly. I think I was able to create enough of a ruffle around the first part of it to see if I can just kind of make the effect by hand, just for this area of the ruffle that no longer has a basting stitch. For the purposes of me actually enjoying this project, I'm not going to be redoing this, so we'll see. I got joy, 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 joy in the soul. I got joy, joy, joy. Dun, 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 dun. I got joy. As you guys can see, I've pinned my ruffle all the way around the outside of the collar. This is my funny area here. So what I've ended up doing is I've just created these little like pleated folds. I've had to do it like I think 2 or 3 times, so it might create a little bit of bulk here that we don't really want, but it's okay. I'm not trying to make things perfect the first time around, you know. This is just all a learning experiment. So now that this is all secured, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my other piece of the collar, and I'm going to take the good side facing down, place it on top, and then I'm going to take the same pins that I used and just make sure that everything is in place. So we'll be doing like the sandwich method, like that, where I've got collar, ruffle, collar. I've been getting myself worked up over the fact that I never seem to finish projects in the arbitrary amount of time I set to do them. So here we are on yet another day of working on this Peter Pan top. I'm not going to lie, there's been a lot of procrastination involved in this particular top, and I don't know why. Moving on, we're just going to pick up right at the collar where I ended yesterday. What you did not see me doing on the camera yesterday was pinning the collar in the little sandwich. So you know you've got collar, ruffle, collar. I'm going to be sewing the whole way around the perimeter of this collar. So starting from this corner all the way around to this corner. And then we can flip him the right way around and we'll get to see the full effect, which I'm really looking forward to. Okay, so let's have a look. So glad I chose to go with the plain white baby cotton as the frill. I think the little bit of contrast is awesome. That is what we have got. You can see the part where I messed up a little bit with the basting stitch where I've had to like overlap. It does look a little bit different to the rest of the frills, but we're not going to be super picky here. We're just Trying our best. I think to the naked eye, to someone that has not like worked on this project, you would never even notice. I could notice, but that's okay. In order to be able to move on with the collar, I need to actually close it off. So I'm just going to be doing a straight stitch on the inside here. And then something that I'm doing for the very first time is I'm going to be creating bias tape and then attaching the collar using bias tape so that all the edges are closed off. So I've got the best side of my collar facing upwards, and then the side that I don't want to be visible is facing towards the right side of the bodice. This is the neckline of the main bodice. I've just got the collar attached at the very center. Now I'm just pinning the collar all along the neckline of the bodice pieces. I've now attached the collar to the neckline just with pins, but what Jess actually does is before she sews it on is she attaches her bias binding, so it all gets sewn at the same time. So before I can attach bias binding, I actually have to make bias binding. I'm just going to measure the length of my neck hole. So what we're going to do here is we're first going to focus on pinning the button plackets. I don't know, is that what you call it? You know this part? We're going to work on pinning that. Then I can attach the bias binding. I'm going to take some pins, and yes, I know I still desperately need a pin cushion. I know we will get there. So as you guys can see, there's a V shape here. So I'm going to be folding my placket wrong side over. Then there's another point over here where I'm going to be folding it backwards on itself. And once we are able to sew this all together and pull it the right way, you'll see exactly the effect that it's going to create. So I'm just going to put that in place. Next, we are going to take our bias binding, right side facing right side. So the bias binding is facing away from me. And I'm basically going to attach it all the way around the neckline, and then we can get to sewing. I don't know if there'd be like another nice neat way to attach this collar without going through the whole bias binding spiel, but I mean, if you guys have got any ideas, I think this is gonna look nice, but if you guys have got any ideas on how to perhaps do this a bit differently, I'd love to hear from you. I'm not done with the bias binding yet. As you guys can see, it's not completely attached. What I need to do now is I need to fold it over once and then over again, and that will hide all of the stitching around the neckline. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, I think we have got a bias binding. Okay, oh my gosh, yes. What's going on here? Okay, so if I do that, I'm so confused. You can see the bias binding has closed off all of the raw edges, which is great. Will you pass me my squizzes, por favor? Muchísimas gracias. ¿Cómo se dice scissors?
Tijeras.
Tijeras. I definitely sense that I have done something slightly wrong here. I really don't know where I went wrong with the placket. I'll show you what I mean now. It's not like the best because it's creating like a little bit of a twisting thing here, but it's okay. This is what it's looking like with the collar on. I love it. It looks beautiful. I'm so happy with the collar. Again, so glad that I chose to do a little bit of a contrasting frill. It's not like a big contrast, but just not having the pattern on the frill, I think like makes it stand out a little bit more. The only thing, which I think I'm going to have to fix because it like really messes up the vibe, is I don't know, I haven't figured out exactly where I went wrong, but the corner parts here where the plackets are supposed to be are just getting like pulled and twisted. I think that I wasn't supposed to sew the bias binding to the placket part the second time around, or I was supposed to sew it the other way. I'm not sure. Honestly, I can't figure it out just yet. But I think I am just going to have to unpick this part of it and just figure it out. I'm not unpicking the whole collar, no ways. But this, I don't know, it just sits really funny. But other than that, I love the collar. I think it's so pretty. I think the size is perfect. It goes just over my shoulder. Oh, love it. Okay, so we are now officially less than a week away from our trip to Mérida. I can't remember when I first started filming this video if I said we were going to Puerto Vallarta, because that was the original plan, but we're no longer going to Puerto Vallarta. Ted, my loves. No. He hates the trucks. You guys might have noticed before this big bottle of water that's always here. We don't have drinkable water here in Mexico, so we have to buy what we call garrafones, which are these big 21-liter waters. So that's the truck that's just currently in front of our house. And Ted does not like trucks or children in front of our house. So apologies for the barking. The plan's changed and we are now going to a colonial town called Mérida. So this beautiful little shirt is definitely going to be ready for that trip, and it's just going to be so perfect because in Mérida, and there's a small little town right by Mérida called Valladolid, there are so many photo opportunities where they've got the most beautiful little pastel colored houses all along the streets. So I think that this cute little top is just going to be so perfect for that trip. But anyways, moving on. Today, what we're going to be doing is finishing the plackets, putting on the buttons, making the buttonholes, doing the hemming, making our little sleeve ties, and then he is ready to be packed to go on our trip to Mérida. So to prepare my plackets before I sew them, yesterday when we did the bias binding, I actually folded it over already and then folded a little bit extra over to hide the raw edges. So I'm going to be following this line and ironing it down, and then doing the same on the side, and then we can sew the plackets in place. Okay, so I have ironed down my plackets. Now I'm just going to be sewing them closed. We've got a straight stitch, the length on about 2, and my needle is in the center. Actually, I'm going to put my needle on the left-hand side, just because I want to get as close to the edge as possible. Alright, so our plackets are done, and I'm not going to lie and say that they turned out perfectly. There are definitely a few very noticeable wobbles in here. This one, the neat one, is the one that's going to get the buttonholes, and then this one is going to get the buttons. So cute! Okay, I think I'm going to start like literally right up here, and these buttons are very small, so I think I might do quite a few. Let's see. I do like that, like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I think I'll do 6. So I think 6 will be perfect. I'm just going to go and measure them all out so they are exactly equal, and then we can mark where I want to put the buttonholes. So this is not the first time I'm making buttonholes. The last time I made buttonholes was actually my previous project when I did the linen pants, where I had to make the 2 buttonholes for the drawstring. That was a bit of an easier task because I only had to make 2, and because of all of the bunching of the waistband and the drawstring, you can't really see many imperfections. So I'm a little bit nervous of messing up this whole shirt just on this part, but I mean, there's nothing I can do. I can just try my best. I'm really hoping that it comes out well. So my machine doesn't actually have the automatic buttonhole maker. Mine is more old school. I'll have to put what it is here. But that's fine. I did it last time and it's actually not that hard. You have to do the 4-step process manually, which is okay. So I'm just going to head over to the sewing machine, make my buttonholes, and hopefully they turn out okay. You got to lift up your foot, press this lever, and out comes your regular presser foot. Then I can take my buttonhole. We want to make sure that this little gap is at the front. So I'm just lining up the bar, and then we're going to drop the presser foot. It might not go the first time. Just got to realign. I think it needs to come forward a tad. There we go. Okay, so now you can see I've made a little pencil mark, and this pencil mark is how big I need the holes to be for my particular buttons to fit through. So I'm going to be sewing across, up, across, and down, but I'm going to show you. So I've lined my fabric up to the presser foot where you can see the pencil mark that I made. So now the fabric and the presser foot are all set. I'm going to move my dial to this one where we've got 1 and a 3. We're going to start on 1, which is going to create this bottom line over here. Then for my length, I'm moving it to the buttonhole length. I'm doing nothing with the tension, nothing with the width. I don't know if those things are important. Here goes nothing. Okay, so this across stitch doesn't look wide enough to me. And I just sewed on a 2.5 width. So I'm going to put it to my highest, to 6. And then I'm just going to unpick this. Hopefully it doesn't create too much of a hole in my fabric. Okay, let's try this again. Now I'm going to put it into position 2. And I'm going to sew the length of the pencil line. Now we're going to put it on 3. Now we're going to put it on 4 and finish him up. Okay. Let's see. That is what we ended up with, which looks tiny. I do not think that our buttons are going to fit through there. No. I fear I have made a fatal mistake. This button is way too big for the size of the hole. So I was able to unpick without causing too much damage, but there definitely is some damage already done. So I think I've got one more shot at this buttonhole. Oh no, it seems to be just stuck in one place. It's not moving. I don't know, this feels like it's going to be a disaster. Oh my gosh. That obviously is horrendous. I don't even know if it's salvageable. I think I completely destroyed this first buttonhole. I should have actually first worked on the bottom buttonhole because that would be going into my pants anyways. Instead I decided to do the first buttonhole, which is a complete disaster. So I don't know what happened, but on step number 4, literally the last line, my fabric wasn't moving, so it was just making a massive bunch of thread, and then I had to like physically push the fabric through, and then it skipped a little bit and it went skew, and it's just a disaster. And I fear that if I try and unpick this, because there is so much bunching of the thread, it's just going to pull all of the fabric apart. So yeah, that really sucks. I'm going to still unpick it and try redo it, but I don't have high hopes. Oh, I'm so sad about this.
That's how you learn, mommy.
So I tried to unpick this disaster, and it's honestly just making it even worse. There's no ways I'm going to be able to get all of this thread out, especially because it bunched up so many times. This was going to be the placket that was going to be on top because it was going to have the buttonholes, and then this was the one that was going to have the buttons. What I'm thinking, are there 2 different things I can do here? So what I'll do is I'll take the good placket, put it over the one that I've messed up, and then just hand sew my buttons onto both plackets to like close off the top. Obviously they're not going to be functional buttons where I can open and close this blouse, but it can just go over my head. So that's not a train smash, but I don't know how professional it would look. Alternatively, I could again just use the good placket and make it the top placket and try the buttonhole thing all over again, and hopefully I get them all right. And then this disaster that I've made over here, my button actually might be able to cover a lot of the mess that I created, more or less. I think I'm going to try the second option, the one where I make all the buttonholes the whole way down, because number one, I do want to practice. It's a skill that I really need to master, so I do want to practice anyways. The only thing is, if it doesn't work out, the whole top is going to be ruined. I'd love to hear in the comments how you would go about fixing this problem, but yeah, I'm just going to switch over my plackets and try the buttonholes again. I have already put the marks down on my other placket, which is now going to become the front placket. And I actually did another test buttonhole, and this one on the scrap piece of fabric came out beautifully. It's perfect, it's perfectly sized, it's just great. So I've got a little bit more confidence. You probably think I'm crazy, but I've literally never sewn a button onto anything before. Can't be that hard, but I'm not super experienced with that. So we'll be sewing on the buttons, doing the hem, finishing up the sleeves, and Bob is your uncle, we will have a new top. Oh, let me show you. Actually, I need to show you this perfect buttonhole and how it perfectly fits my button. So this is my perfect little buttonhole, so nice and clean and neat. Are they exactly straight? No. But are they going to be functional buttonholes? It definitely looks like they are. To finish off the buttonholes, I actually need to take a hand needle and thread the ends of the thread, like kind of through the thread that I've created, just to close it off and keep it secure. Then I can take Mrs. Sally the seam ripper and rip a hole through the fabric. I'll show you guys. I know that sounds scary, but it's not actually scary. So that's what I'm going to be doing quickly. I'm not sure how many of my videos you guys have seen, but you might be noticing that I'm actually wearing my linen pants today. These pants that you see me wearing were made by me. I actually made them in the video before this, I believe. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of losing track of the videos now, but I think that this was made in the previous video. It was quite a project, but I'm so thrilled with how they turned out. So if you're interested in making yourself some linen pants, go and check out that video. You might be inspired. Something I would recommend now that I'm trying to hand stitch this is my tails of my thread is too short to effectively do this. It's a bit of a mission now because the threads are not long enough. So if you're doing buttonholes, leave much longer tails than what I did. You will thank yourself. Okay, now that it's threaded through the needle, I can push my needle through, which will drag the tail through, and now I can trim this little tail off because it is secured. Okay, so I've gone in and I've closed off all of my buttonholes, all 6 of them. Now that they're all closed off, now we can pick up Sally the seam ripper and rip the hole that's like in the middle of the threads, if that makes sense. I'll do a close-up so you guys can see. A trick that I saw somewhere on the internet, I'm not sure, I've watched so many tutorials at this point, is taking a pin and placing it right at the top of your buttonhole. Okay, and then the reason you want to do this is so that your seam ripper doesn't go all the way through, so the pin will kind of like stop it. Okay, and our first buttonhole is complete. So I've gone ahead and found a tutorial on YouTube, which I'll link below, that shows you how to put a button onto a shirt. We're going to go for the first button. Woo! And drop our pin on the ground. So I've already threaded my thread through and I've got a nice little knot on the end here. And this tutorial specifically shows you how to do buttons for shirts, because what you actually need is you need the button to not be right up against the fabric. You need it to have a little bit of breathing room so that the button can actually go through the buttonhole, if you know what I mean. So you're going to need a normal pin and then a needle. Taking my button and I'm placing it right where I want it to be. And I'm going through from the back side. If you hear welding in the background, we've got a lovely neighbor who has decided to set up a welding shop on his front lawn, which obviously we think is just very considerate of him. So apologies for the welding sounds if you guys can hear that. I know it's driving me crazy. Okay, so before I pull my thread all the way through, I'm going to place my pin there just so that it creates that space that I was talking about. The tutorial that I watched actually recommends that you go through and do about 8 stitches to secure your button. So that's what I'm going to do. Woo! Oh, okay. Yay! Very first button/buttonhole. Okay, so we are all done with the buttons and the buttonholes, and it actually turned out a lot nicer than I originally thought it was going to be. I'm so happy with this. This is lovely. What's on the menu today?
Carne asada.
Carne asada con sopa de pollo y maíz. Obviously, I'm going to lose a little bit of the length because of the hem, but I'm thinking on the side here, I think I want it to be about here. So if I want to wear this top tucked into my pants, which I more than likely will do, it will look fine. It will still comfortably fit within my pants. But if I wanted to wear it out, I personally just think it's more flattering to have that shape at the bottom of a shirt. I think I'm going to take my trusty little pencil. Oh, the baby's having dreams in this corner here right now. And I'm just going to mark roughly where I want this blouse to come to. I've just kind of made like an angle with my ruler. I'm going to cut it straight across. With the scissors, I'll just round it a little bit at the bottom. I'm just going to take it over right at the seam and line it up with the seam. Make sure my armpit seams are in line. I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm just going to be following the cut on this one. Okie dokie, let's have a look. Okay, that looks pretty equal to me. Okay, so I just need to do the hemming and we are completely done. Okay, so this is the final top. It's very cute. Really like it. I just have to show you guys what it looks like out because I did the hem last night, and what I actually ended up doing with the hem is, because this fabric I find very difficult to hem and I wanted a thin hem, I folded it up once, very thin, sewed it, and then folded it up a second time and sewed it. And that obviously was not the correct thing to do because you guys can see this like funny wavy thing that happened at the bottom here. It looks really bad. It just does not look clean. Hi my babes. It just does not look clean or professional at all. It looks very like wonky and wavy and just not right. It would have to be tucked in if I were to wear it. Yes, my lamb, so you're just desperate for attention right now. The only major thing that went wrong with this top that makes it like pretty much unwearable is the mess that I made right up at the top here. So you guys know what happened with that. But also what I think is I cut the neckline a little bit too low, and I also placed the button a little bit too low, so it kind of like gapes open. I don't know, it's just this area is the reason why I don't think I'm going to be able to like wear this top. But anyways, I learned a ton from this. The ruffle was a bit tricky, but I've got some ideas for next time. I probably wouldn't use a baby cotton. I would probably recommend like a nice linen, or a regular cotton would probably be a lot better for this type of top. I also think I would do something differently with the sleeves. This is okay. This is the effect that I was going for. But what I think I will do next time, because this looks quite bulky, this like channel method that I used, is I might try to do a shirred effect. I think that's what it's called. What else? Oh, I don't know how I would do the hem differently to avoid getting this wavy effect, but it's not bad. It's okay. If I tuck it in and I suppose maybe use a safety pin to kind of like close it up here, I might get away with wearing it. I don't know. We'll see how I feel. You guys might already know, or maybe not, that this is a brand new channel. So I'm so open to hearing your ideas. What do you guys want to see me make? What type of videos do you guys want to see me do? I might have already posted the first episode of Sewing Diaries, which is going to be slightly different from this type of sew long thing where I'm more like showing the behind the scenes of like how I plan, how I storyboard, how I choose my fabric, all of that kind of thing. Let me know, like if you guys want to see more sewing diaries, if you really like these sew alongs, or if you have any other ideas. Literally, I'm all ears. Additionally, I have some patterns lined up for the festive season. I've got something very beautiful for our anniversary dinner, for Christmas dinner, but going into the new year, I've got nothing. I'm so interested in hearing from you. What do you guys want to see me make next? Please leave your pattern suggestions below in the comments. If you made it this far, let me know by leaving a secret emoji, which can be a yellow heart. Thank you for being here, and we will see you in the next one. Hasta luego.